Good day. Welcome once again to that 1611 King James Bible Study with Brother Tim Beatty. First of all, we would like to say that we are very, very blessed, very thankful. A young lady here some 4 or 5 weeks ago had placed down in one of the comment sections concerning that one of the videos entitled Being Watchful of the Coming of the Lord. In the comment section there, she had reached out to the people to help her pray for that of her daughter and her son. Daughter had been out in the ways of the world for quite some time. They've both been saved, and the son had beginning to venture out in the ways of the world. She requested each and every one of us to help pray for that of her children, that they would once again come back into that of the ways of the Lord, so she would not have the fear of what the devil's going to be doing to them, whether they'd be able to live through another night, or whether the devil will take them out through the way, or what. That's what the devil came to do: seek and kill and destroy that whoever he could. And it's a restfulest thing to have to lay down tonight and not knowing what the devil's doing with your children. But when they're in the grace and been in the salvation of that of God, where they've been saved by God, and they're in the will of God, then we know that they're in the very protective hand of God. And if something was to happen, we know that they finished their work for the Lord the way God intended it. But a lot of times their lives get shortened a lot sooner than what it should have, because of the ways that they choose to go back out into the world and face that of the world and allow the devil to do with them whatever he wants. But we thank God. Here, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, she has wrote a thank you letter in the comment section down there, and thanking all of those that helped her pray for that of her children, because her home once again is back in the security of that of God. They've come back to the Lord where they need to be, and I tell you what, the fervent prayers of a righteous man, or a righteous person rather, it availeth much. But if you want to touch the very heart of God, you get sincere with that of God in your prayer life, and let him see your tears. Told David, he said, I saw your tears. And let him see how concerned you are and how sincere you are. And my friend, when you touch the heart of God, then God will start touching your heart. And it may be in the way in which he brings that loved one back. But we thank God for everyone that helped this young lady pray for that of her children. She can lay her head down at night now knowing that her daughter's all right in the safety of the hands of God. We truly thank you for that. And the prayers, if anyone has someone you want us to help you pray for, and all the others have used these, please feel free to add them to that in the comment section below here. Let us know that maybe you have a mother, son, daughter, aunt, uncle, grandma, or grandpa, whoever. You want us to help you pray for her that's maybe never been saved and like to see them saved. We feel it an honor to take them into our prayer closet and pray for them. Maybe backslid out of the ways of God, and now they're out in the ways of the world and not knowing what the devil's going to do to them. If you'd love for us to help you pray for them and all the others that views these, please let us know. And like we say, we will take these names into this prayer closet, whoever they are, whether it be mother, father, son, or daughter, and we'll lift them up to the Lord. This week we're going to be doing a study in that of the King James Bible, in the book of Philippians, the 4th chapter, the 13th verse. And we're going to do this study probably in a different way that you've never heard it studied on, and show you some different verses you can look at in the Bible that you probably never really looked at them that way. Not trying to confuse you. We ain't here trying to be the author of confusion, because God ain't the author of confusion, but we're trying maybe to bring this out in such a way that it will be a blessing to those that are maybe in a disability condition, or maybe that of an elderly person cannot go and do what he once did. Maybe this will be a blessing to them. And for those that are in the homes of these people, the caretaker or whatever, maybe this will be a help to you to maybe get you to look at that person in quite a different way, and get the flesh out of the way, and see this person in the perspective that that person actually sees himself at. The Bible said, or Paul said in Philippians 4:13, he said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, Paul was writing this epistle to that of the Christians at large there in the Philippians, and trying to establish and show them the joys and the love and all of these things concerning that of God, and how much he cared in all of this throughout his letter to the Philippians. And he even goes in to warn them against that to go back into the ways of Judaism, and tells them about the trust and that of how we're not to trust in that of just legal righteousness. Gives them great hope in a lot of ways concerning that of God in this letter in which he had wrote. And he says, like we had quoted there, read in the Word of God, that I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Now, as we go down through life, we give our life to the Lord. We begin to serve the Lord, and we serve him faithfully. There may be a time in our life that it may be that of where age catches up with us. Old age will catch up with a lot of them one day after a while, and it will put them in a place in their life where they can no longer do for the Lord what they once did. It could be a disability, an injury of some sort that could hinder that person greatly in a way that he can no longer do that for the Lord that he once did. And if we're not very, very careful in the way we look at situations and the way we are thinking about a situation, we can become a greater hurt to that of a child of God than we can help. I can remember a gentleman that God placed in my life so many years ago. He was an elderly man, a preacher of God's Word, a man that I can never recall a day ever seeing this man. What he wasn't joyful, had a smile on his face and jolly every time you seen him. Always had something to say about the Lord. And God truly blessed me from the time he put him into my life until it come to the day in which he closed his eyes in death. That it's then when I look back and I've seen what a blessing that it was for me, and what a help it had been for me for this gentleman to be placed in my life by that of God. Not only him, but his entire family. I love them all. Thank God for them. And I think they're precious, precious, precious people. Well, there came a day when Brother James Shavers had to be put in the nursing home because of he had begun to get Alzheimer's, and his sickness had been, or his health had begun to deteriorate to the point that his family could no longer give him the care at home he needed to have. And don't take me and get me wrong now, his family loved their daddy. They was not hardly a day went by they wasn't checking on Dad in that nursing home. There was occasions when they'd come and get Dad out, and if they're having Thanksgiving or a cookout or a dinner, they'd come and get Dad out of the nursing home, and they'd take him so he could fellowship with them at their homes and enjoy the feast that they were having. They never counted him out of nothing. They continually was there with him, trying to be a help to him in any way they could. And was there every moment they had a chance to be there, that they could be there. They didn't neglect him in any way like a lot of them do, because they truly loved their dad. But one day I went to see Brother James Shavers after he had been in there about, I'd say maybe a couple of months. He had been in the nursing home. And I walked in there, and he was sitting in the dining room. Went back to his room first and couldn't find him. They told me he was probably up front. Always up there visiting with somebody, talking to him about the Lord. But I went up there in the dining room or the cafeteria area, and there he sat. But I seen him in a way I'd never seen him before. He just looked down. There was just a look of unhappiness on his face. And I went over and sat down with him and talking to him, and he just continued to carry this uneasy look on him, or unassuring look on him. And it just wasn't normal to see him this way. So I asked him, I said, Brother James, what's going on? I said, it seems like you're a little down about something. Of course, in my mind, I figured it's because he was in the nursing home, could no longer be out doing what he'd like to do. That's pretty well what I thought. And I asked him, Brother James, what's going on? You just ain't as joyful as you always are. I said, I've never seen you this way. What's going on? He said, well, Brother Tim, I got in here and kind of got to thinking about something that happened, about 4 or 5 weeks before I had to come to the nursing home. And I guess I've sat here and let the old devil just whoop me around with it and waller me to death with it. He said, for whatever reason, I just got to thinking about it. And he said, there's this dear friend of mine. They was fixing to start a revival. And he called me up and told me, Brother James, said, we're fixing to start a revival. And I really wanted to call you and see if there'd be any way you could hold this revival for us. And me knowing how your health was and how you'd been feeling, I thought it was better to go ahead and get someone else. But we'd love for you to come and be with us tonight if you can. And he said, Brother Tim, he said, I can understand the way he was thinking. Because he loved me. I know he loved me. Cares for me. Probably thought he was watching out for me. But he said, you know, there's times you'd kind of like to make these decisions on your own, whether you can do something or whether you can't. He said, after all, the good Lord knows what we can do and what we can't. Some days we may be able to do and some days we may not be able to do. He said, you just don't kick somebody off the side without knowing. And he didn't say that to me mean. Brother Shavers had a way with words. You just had to know him to know him. And if you ever got to know him, you would want to keep getting to know him. He was that type of a person. And I thought about that throughout the years and thought about what Paul said here, that I can do all things through Jesus Christ who strengthens me. And really in our journey through life, we may have a mother or a father, and I'm talking about people that are in the way of the Lord. I really am. And you can consider this, even if they're not in the ways of the Lord, you might be able to put some thought into this too. But somebody that's been on the firing line for the Lord, they died out for the world for one reason, and that is to sell out to that of God and become that of prisoner of the Lord. They did it for a reason. That's what they wanted to do. That's the way they wanted to finish their life. As Paul did. But we, in the flesh, we allow our eyes to go to looking upon the outer man. And allow our minds to go to thinking about the problems they have in their life. And that's where it ends. That's where it stops. That's as far as it goes. But we do it out of love. We do it out of because we do love them, do care for them, and we want to keep them here as long as we can and make it as easy on them as we possibly can make it. But what we don't realize, we're doing more harm than good. I thought about Brother James there and what he said, that he had just kind of like him and the Lord to be able to make these decisions, and that's the way they are. They may be handicapped. They may be disabled. Paul had an eye problem. He had a problem with his sight. But every now and then there's still seen a time whenever God seen fit for him to write a letter. On the most part, he gave Paul some help. He spoke the words and had these scribes or whoever's writing for him to write the words down which he was speaking because of his problem. But at least Paul was able to go through his journey of life. And he had a lot of issues, a lot of problems. He seeked God over daily. And the majority of it dealt with his flesh. He said there's no good thing in this flesh. He battled that flesh. But at least Paul ran this race that he was in and was able to run it to the end with his head held high. You know, a lot of times, and it ain't because we deliberately do this or do this to hurt somebody, but a lot of times how much we really are hurting people when we think we're helping them when it comes to them and the Lord and what God's placed them to do. They may be a great song leader, been in your church and led songs for years. And then they got maybe some kind of sickness or ailments that they could no longer go and be in God's house and do the things they once did. And you never one time offered to call them and say, brother, do you feel like you might be able to come and lead a song or two for us this week? We'd sure be honored if you could do that. Give them and the Lord an opportunity to decide whether they can or can't. Don't make that decision for them. Give them the opportunity. We need to be given opportunities whenever opportunities arise, and not be the decision makers in their lives. If we're not very careful, we can become a stumbling block to people like that and hurt them greatly. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 8 and 9, he said, speaking or thinking upon that of the stumbling block, he said for us to take heed lest by any means this liberty, the liberty in which God has gave us, yours, become a stumbling block to them that are weak. There's more than one way to be weak. You can be weak, just get saved and be that of a very weak Christian. And let somebody see you mess up, and then the next thing you do, instead of helping them up, you're putting them down for it. You're putting them down and making them feel like they ain't going nowhere. They can't never grow like this. That's becoming a stumbling block in their life. Well, we can be a stumbling block in that of a weak person on the outpoint as we look at weakness being sickness. If we never give them the opportunity to be the one saying, no, I don't believe I can, or I'll pray about it, or let me think about it, we make these decisions for them. And then they begin to sit around and think within themselves, I don't guess I'm any good for anybody anymore. Don't look like my family needs me no more. There's nothing I can do for them. Don't look like the Lord wants me no more because He's having everybody else to make the decisions for me. I must not be good enough to make them for myself. That's the state of mind they get in. Is not Paul said, is he not the one that said in weakness, when I am weak, I become strong? This spirit that God puts inside that of a man once you get saved, don't never underestimate the power of God in that of man. That's what I want you to think about throughout this week. Concerning the text that we read here, I want you to think about this thought. Remembering what the power of God is able to do in that of man. Remember that. If the power of God can raise the dead, it can also raise the sickness. If the power of God can raise the lame, it can also raise the bedfast. Anytime the Lord may see fit to use you, He'll see to it, He'll take care of you. But at least let that person and the Lord decide whether or not they can do it. God gave us enough of sense to realize whether we can do something or whether we can't. For over 28 years, right, 30 years, I've had a disability. Back issues, had 4 major operations, had 3 pain pumps put in over the period of years. I can remember only one time that I was ever called to hold a funeral that I had to say no. And it was about 4 weeks after I had had a pain pump put into my abdomen. And you have to stay down for about a solid month. Once you have that operation done, you have to stay down that long to make sure all the skin that's around that catheter that also has to be put in you and everything. A young lady called me. Her brother had died, and I'd known this family for years, and was even a pastor in some of the members of their family, and he had died, and they called me and wanted to know if I could hold their brother's funeral. It was going to be held in Soddy Daisy down there. And I told her, I said, sis, I said, I hope you forgive me, but I don't think I'll be able to. I'm just now recovering from an operation I have to have due to my back injuries and everything. And I'm just now recovering from it, and I just don't believe I'm going to be able to. One time in 26 years that I ever have to refuse a funeral, and I've helped many funerals. Never have refused a wedding. I have, but not on due to cases because of my illness, due to cases because of some kind of an ungodly situation. But my injuries has never caused me to have to refuse one. In the 20, right at 30 years, or not 30 years, but 28 years that I've been very active in God's house, not counting the times that I had to be laid up due to surgery, forget about them. I'd say a total of about 6 months in all that I've had to miss God's house because of operations out of 28 years. But only 9 times that I can ever remember, maybe 10 times, in 28 years that I ever had to have to miss church because the pain was to the point that I could not get up and go. And there have been times I've been asked to come and preach, and I'd practically have to crawl up behind the pulpit. But once I got behind the pulpit and the anointing of God began to flood my soul, whatever was going on with this old outer body, I no longer noticed it. God has a way of taking away the hindrance, and that's what that is. It's a hindrance. God will be with you regardless of what the situation is. 2 Samuel 22, Samuel made the statement, for thou hast guided me, or girded me with the strength. He girded him with the strength at the time that Samuel needed it, to be able to battle them that rose up against him and the children of Israel. And he said, against me hast thou subdued for his people. He subdued his people because of the strength in which he gave Samuel to be able to do what God needed him to do. Just like God will with us. Paul said in Ephesians chapter 3, he said that he would grant, talking about God, he said he would grant you according to his riches of his glory to strengthen, to be strengthened rather, with might by his spirit in the inner man. That spirit that's in that inner man, my friend, a lot of times we forget the power that it has. A lot of times we forget, and we a lot of times become a stumbling block, as we stated earlier, to those, and we think we're being a help, but actually we're becoming a stumbling block. We find that Paul said in Romans chapter 19, or maybe chapter 14, I believe it's chapter 14, verse 13, I believe is where it's at. It says to let us not therefore judge one another anymore. Let us not therefore judge one another anymore. And he goes on to say, he said, rather judge this. He said, rather judge this. Rather judge that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. And a lot of times we can become that stumbling block. We can say if a preacher come to you and your dad just was an old-timey preacher and his health had got bad on him, and he come to you as being his daughter and say, sis, do you think maybe if I was to call your dad and ask him, do you think maybe he could come preach for us a Sunday? You sat there and said, no, he just ain't able to preach no more. His health's too bad and he just can't do it no more. If you ever get asked that again, you are a preacher's daughter, and they ask you that, regardless if dad's health's bad or not, why not say this? Well, I really don't know what him and the Lord can do. If it's up to him and the Lord, then the only thing I know is to call him and ask him. Let him and the Lord make that decision. I can't make it for him. You need to call and ask him. And I'm sure he'll let you know. Be considerate of them. Make them feel like they've still got a responsibility. I'm going to say this. They've been a lot of precious men and women of God where sickness or ailments or disabilities or whatever has overtaken them. And because their friends, their family, has all been looking on the outer appearance and thinking with the mind of their condition, they've caused them to be left out of some of the most precious and most memorable times they could ever have in life. Because you are afraid to ask them to maybe come with you at a homecoming or come with you to your son's wedding or whatever it may be, because the way their health was. And you didn't ask them because of that, and how much you really harm we really do when we do that. Causing them to miss out on the most glorious times, that when it comes their time of getting ready to lay their head to rest and shut their eyes in that of death, they could have spent this time of thinking on those glorious times that God still gave them the opportunity and still gave them the strength to go be a part of. But yet they cannot lay there and look back on them times because they was never asked. And no doubt you loved them, you cared for them, you didn't want them hurt, or you didn't want them to overdo themselves that would cost them to maybe get sicker than what they was. Let me say this. It may surprise you to know that whenever somebody is in there for the Lord and they're doing something for the Lord and they're working for the Lord, every time they're asked to do something, whether they're able to do it or not, it does nothing but get their joy even the much more higher, because they're still feeling like that they're needed. It's making them feel like they're needed. And they don't sit around and let the devil, like Brother James said, kick them around and waller them in self-pity and just see how low he can really get them. When I leave this walks of life, I hope and pray that I ain't had to be knocked out of too many things in life because of the way people sees me as far as my health goes. I really do. There's no doubt that my own children has probably neglected of letting me know about certain things or be a part of a few things, and they didn't do it out of hatefulness. They didn't do it out of meanness. They really truly done it out of the love they had for Dad. But it's the wrong type of love. You do it by looking on what's on the inner man. You've had children might have done this. I don't know. I have no idea. But I do know it goes on because I talk to too many people, especially the elders. And a few of them that's a lot worse shape than I am. I can still get up and go to church here and there and still take part in about anything they are to take part of in God's house. Praise be to God, and I give him all the glory. But there's some out there can't do as much as I can. And you'll be surprised how many people's out there like that. Their own church members don't even call on them to do nothing anymore. They don't. And they're sitting there wanting to do something. Some of them's even asked, went as far as asked, would you care if I tried this or tried that? No, we'll get somebody else to do that. We'll try to find you something you can do. Quit interfering with the power of God. Believe me, you have not got the power that the power of God has got. Did not, I believe it was Isaiah. No, he said he was my stronghold in the time of need. Did not he say that he's my tower of offense? Not he, Isaiah, say that he will rise me up. He's my stronghold. He's my power in the time of my defense. Paul, when I was weak, I become strong. Paul, I can do all things through him, through Christ that strengthens me. In the Word of God, we find in the book of, I believe it's in the book of 1st, 2nd Corinthians. Listen to what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. Who also has made us able, ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. That same Spirit that can give you life, it can still give you a message to preach. It can still give you a song to sing. It can still give you something to do for the Lord. All they ask is give them a chance. Don't look at them like they're no longer helpful. Give them a chance. 2 Chronicles 2, 9 and 8, it says, And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye, always having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good works. His grace is sufficient to help us to do whatever God needs us to do, regardless of what our conditions like. Regardless of what their conditions like. Look at it this way. One day it may be you, and you've been on this road all this way. Boy, wouldn't you like to run it like Paul, with your head held high all the way to the end? And don't get about 6 months to the end of your road and have to lay there and think, well, they just don't need me no more. I don't guess God can even use me anymore. He won't never let nobody ask me nothing. Well, he probably has, but they refuse to ask you. They refuse to ask you because they loved you and they was looking at you with the carnal eye and thinking with the carnal mind and seeing the situation and pretty well letting that make a decision for you. It wasn't that they didn't care for you, they loved you. But we're trying to do this to maybe get them to look at it at a whole different perspective in that of life. Samuel said, I believe it was, or let me go over here just a second and read. In Isaiah, verse 40, now listen to these two verses here. In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, he said, But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. We may have sat around and wait a little bit for God to strengthen us in order to do something for him, but he's not through with us. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. God's able to put us on our feet, allow our feet to carry us where they need to go, in order that you and the Lord can get done what the Lord needs done. Remember that. God's able. Listen to this. In Samuel 41 and 10 it says, Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. He'll give us strength. He'll hold us up. He'll walk with us. And he'll not let us faint. And he'll not let us grow weary. As long as we're doing what God needs us to do, as long as we have breath, we still have a work to do for the Lord, but we've got to be given. You've got to be willing to give these people the opportunity to either be able to do the work or not to, and they will know whether they can or can't, but they've got to be able to feel like they still have a responsibility, or they are still wanted, rather. You've got to let them feel like they're still wanted, they're still needed. And above all things, by doing this, you've got to make them feel like they're loved like they never thought they could be loved. They spend enough time of sitting around worrying about the things they can't no longer do. They sure don't need to be sitting around thinking about the things that they'll never be able to do no more. Like they're washed up, they're finished, they're no good for nobody else, they're no good for they're just there. That's all they are. They're in the way now. That's the way they'll get the feeling, even though that ain't what you're intending, but that's what your intentions does. And your good intentions sometimes are not the best intentions. We need to look as God looks. Look on the spiritual side. Look what's inside that person. As far as the Spirit of God goes, it will lift him up. It will help him to stand up. It will strengthen him when he is weak. It will help him to walk when he's not able to walk. And it will hold him up as long as he needs to stand up. That's the power of the Spirit of God. So we need to realize in that of the journey and the walks with that of God, that a lot of times if we ain't careful, we're going to hinder more than we're going to help. Christ said in Luke 10:19, he says, "Behold, I give unto you power to tread upon serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemies, and nothing shall by any means hurt you." He gives us that much power to tread over these things whenever we come upon them unawarely, get by a copperhead or a rattlesnake or something unawarely, or drink something poisonous, somebody's trying to kill us. He can bring us through every bit of that if we're doing it unawarely that we're doing it. But now if we tempt God and deliberately try to do it, it's liable to take us out of here. So let's not be tempting God. If we're going to be poisoned, let it be done by the means in which we don't know about it. And God will take care of us. We need to get to the point of quit letting our eyes see the condition they're in, our minds thinking about the condition they're in, and start thinking about what their purpose here in life is and what really makes them happy. And that is to still be able to feel like they are worth something and they still mean something to you and you still need them in your life and God needs them in their life and God still needs to use them now and then whenever them and the Lord thinks they're able of doing it. And if we do that, you may be surprised how much happier, how much more joy, and who knows, joy and happiness, and get full of all of this, and the Spirit gets stirred up. Why, it's liable to bring that person off the bed where you don't have to go back to it no more. That's what the Spirit of God does. It can raise it up. It can raise you up. It can get you so full of so much joy that you'll just keep improving more and more and more every day. And who's to say just how much God will restore you? Only God. Only God. Who's to say what the power of the Spirit of God can do? My friend, you cannot put a limit on the power of God. It's impossible. There's nothing that you can even compare His power with. Nothing known to man that can be compared to the power of that of the Spirit of God. So let's always, for the sake of that brotherhood and sisterhood, one with another in one mind and one accord, let's kindly turn our process thinking around when it comes to those less fortunate. Instead of looking and seeing their condition or thinking about how bad their condition is, let's look and see, let's look at what they sold out to, and they sold out to Jesus Christ, and they'll start thinking what would make them really happy, laying there on the seat to do nothing or being able to ask them now and then to do something for that of the glory of God. Let's change our train of thought around by doing it that way, and that way we'll truly then be happy enough, and we won't have to be worried about becoming a stumbling block unawarely in their life because of their weakness. So we're here to be a help to one another. We're here to encourage one another. I appreciate for all the encouragement words that I get now and then from my friends on Gmail and on these YouTubes, and it lifts me up. And I'll assure you one thing: as long as I have breath, as long as people will allow me and the Lord to do anything for Him that I can do, I'm going to do it. I've never shoved God away to sell out to nothing, and neither will I ever do it, because I want to finish my race with my head held high, continuing on to that of a place called heaven one day out of a while. And I want to be able to be with as many of my friends and loved ones as I possibly can. So when we see somebody in a condition, and their condition may not be as grand as it once was, let's turn our way of thinking back around And instead of looking at their condition and how bad it is, let's just think how good it can be if we just give them the opportunity and let them make the choice between them and the Lord, if they cannot do something, and let's give them the choice, the decision to make that choice instead of making it from ourselves. Let's let them decide on what they still can do and what they can't do. And I'll assure you, between them and the good Lord and that of the Spirit, if it's God's will for them to do it, then God will help them out. God will lift them up, and God will see them through it. But if it's not their will, then I'll assure you, they'll let you know that I just don't believe I can do it this time. And if they say that a dozen times, don't quit coming back to them and continue to ask them, because that makes them feel wanted and needful. So until next time, please stay blessed, be safe, and I truly hope and pray that someone else during this week, the rest of it, or the week to come, someone else gets to see their loved ones come back in the grace of God, or maybe get saved for the first time, that they would be in that of the grace of God, and that soul would be saved from that of a devil's hell. But until next time, be blessed, and please stay safe, and may the blessings of God never depart from that of your home.